Now, this morning we are Luke 22. We're live on Facebook. Welcome to Jenny, Tandy, and Carolyn. And right, we're ready to go. So we're looking at Luke 22. We'll do the first. We're doing. This is heading up towards the crucifixion. So it starts with Passover and the build up to Passover. And I think we'll just walk it out step by step. And so here we go, is Luke 22. We'll do 1 to 6 first, and then we'll do, let's read through to 12. Let's do 1 to 12, and we'll divide it up as we work through it, if that's all right. Would anyone like to read and someone like to pray?
I'll pray. You want?
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Go for it, Carolyn, and we'll find someone to read.
Right. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Tandy. Tandy will read. Go for it, Carolyn.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you for your word. We look forward to enjoying you and to just be encouraged and to be transformed today. As you do that little by little every day, and we thank you for this opportunity to worship you through the Bible study. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Okay, Tandy, Luke 22, 1 to 12 would be wonderful.
1 to 12. Okay. The Passover of unleavened bread, also called Passover, drew near. The high priests and religion scholars were looking for a way to do away with Jesus, but fearful of people, they were also looking for a way to cover their tracks. That's when Satan entered Judas, the one called Iscariot, and was one of the 12. Leaving the others, he conferred with the high priests and the temple guards about how he might betray Jesus to them. They couldn't believe their good luck and agreed to pay him well. He gave them his word and started looking for a way to betray Jesus, but out of sight of the crowd. The day of unleavened bread came. The day of the Passover lamb was butchered. The day the Passover lamb was butchered. Jesus sent Peter and John off, saying, "Go, prepare the Passover for us so we can eat it together." They said, "Where do you want us to do this?" He said, "Keep your eyes open as you enter the city. A man carrying a water jug will meet you. Follow him home. Then speak with the owner of the house. The teacher wants to know, where is the guest room where I can eat the Passover meal with my disciples? He will show you a spacious second-story room, swept and ready. Prepare the meal there."
Okay, thank you, Tandy. So this is the build-up to Passover, and I think before we get into some of the details on Passover, it's worth looking at the build-up before that, which is verses 1 to 6. So I think if we just focus on verses 1 to 6 for now, that's the bit where it says that the chief priests and scribes were looking for a way to put Jesus to death, but they also feared the people. And you know, I think that kind of setting politically, it's just amazing these guys were so opposed to Jesus when he'd silenced all their arguments, all the kind of questions they brought. They didn't have an answer for what Jesus brought back to them. And so they didn't dare ask him any questions. They've got themselves into a position where they are vehemently against him, but at the same time unable to challenge him. And so they've arrived at the conclusion that he needs to die, because they can't do anything else. It won't stand up to reason, their reasoning. It won't stand up to things like that. So they are very, very settled on this. And this is a kind of background coming into Passover. which is, where Jerusalem would have been swelled with people. People were listening to Jesus in the temple courts. We just read in the last part of this passage the other day. And so Jesus is teaching in the temple. People are flocking to him. Jerusalem's full. It's party season, and the numbers have swelled. The city's full to capacity, and that's the setting where the scribes and Pharisees were thinking, we need to get rid of this guy, and that's the beginning part of that. I don't know if anyone's got anything they'd like to chip in, but it goes into verse 3. Then Satan entered into Judas Iscariot, who was one of the 12, and he went and conferred with the chief priests and officers how he might betray them. And we've got this betrayal right in the middle of this all. So I don't know. I can see one hand up. I see Tandy's hand up. Go for it, Tandy.
Yeah, I think you've raised that one theme there of betrayal. I'm also seeing this idea of fear of man, rather than fear of God. The Bible tells us that we've not been given a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind, to make sound judgment. And what Satan goes about his business anyway, and you're just thinking here, just like Judas, we can be in that position where it's about, the plotting and everything that is going on there. We have a choice to make, and we can always make that sound judgment. Never mind what sometimes you hear people, oh, the devil entered me and I did this, but we have that power to make that sound judgment. At the end of the day, we have a choice to make over everything that every decision that we take. We have a choice. And I think I also love the fact that, and I think we really do live in times where it's so easy to fear men, but not just in terms of being afraid of them, but just thinking, who's seeing, who's looking, and so we give reverence more to what a human being can see, and forgetting that we have a God who sees, and we are in his presence 24/7, and he sees what a normal human being cannot see. Sometimes it's like think that is an adult. If there's young people, they're like, is an adult watching? Are my parents watching? Is my pastor watching? Who's the best friend? But I think the greatest wisdom comes out of is God watching, and just being we are vulnerable with him, and just being real with God, who sees and knows us beyond what we could be afraid that people know about us. So I think that's one theme there I see, and also I think another one of the fact that these I'm not forgetting the other one, but also I think this timing of the fact that the Passover was drawing near, and so people are gathering for this, for the sake of this event. So this is the time they are picking to do all this plot. That timing there is very intentional. And you're just thinking, I think they've actually thought this through. And when people are really thinking of bringing someone down, they wouldn't do that in private, would they? They really want to come out and really demonstrate their wickedness here, and it's a big plot, and they're going for the heart of it. This is where all the for us would say all the Christians are gathered and things like that. I think a use of the public stage there, definitely wrong use of the public stage there, in my view. And the plotting, the devil never does his things in secret anyway. I think when we're looking at application-wise in our own lives, he tries to really destroy things from the heart of it. So they were not afraid to even kill the Son of God. And also, I think this idea of political correctness. There's a lot of politics going on with this. So I think this idea of political correctness, more so for us as believers today, is one of those key themes that just runs through in a lot of things, and they can just be things done for political correctness' sake, and yet without considering the real heart of God and the fear of God in it.
And I think sometimes with political correctness, it's correct politically and wrong in every other way. as I think there's things that are going on at the moment with different speeches and so on. There's a lot wrong, but it's politically correct. It's astute politically sometimes, and I think that's spot on. Just looking at this, I'm sort of querying. I'll just come to you in a minute, Jenny. Save you having your hand up too long. Looking at this, I'm sort of thinking, surely it would have been easier if you wanted to do Jesus, get rid of Jesus, to do it sneakily along a path while he was traveling through Samaria or something. Do you know what I mean? Send a little band of guys along and try and kill him. I'm trying to think through what was politically astute about killing Jesus at a time when Jerusalem was full of people, because crowds are fickle. You just don't know what way they'll react, and that's been as unpredictable then as it is now. So if the crowd got into there, you could have a whole uproar in the city, which would cause the Roman army to come in with like a flood, and seize control of everything. Were they trying to trigger that? I don't think so. So you've got to sort of think it was a very risky strategy to do something when it's festival time, when everyone's merry and a lot of things going on. You sort of think, actually, that time, at a religious festival, a very, very tough time, what was in it for them? Why would they choose that time? And I think part of it is the opportunity offered them by Judas. And I think the other thing with it is just thinking about it. If you get rid of Jesus at this festival, all the people at this festival are going to go home and tell everyone what happened in Jerusalem. And as a result of that, you've got rid of this man from the whole nation in one fell swoop. And I think this is the risk taking. The gamble they took was, if we get rid of him at the festival, it'll go into the whole nation and we're all finished with this. Whereas if we kill him on a little quiet road, they'll be saying, oh, where is he? Oh, I haven't seen him for a while. Do you know what I mean? It might have been a communication issue, which, as you're saying, Tandy, political correctness. There might have been some of those things at play. I haven't thought of that before. Just thinking about it now. Jenny, I saw your hand up.
Yes, but I was just thinking, Judas couldn't have suddenly decided he was going to betray Jesus. It must have been like steadily resentment building up, or doubt and fear building up, mustn't it? So we've got to be careful of our thoughts, be careful of allowing things in that can build up and, escalate into something that you never intended it to be. I think this is the thing. Because, Judas obviously wasn't happy for some time. He couldn't have been. Yeah. And he could have gone to Jesus and asked him, why are you doing this, or why, couldn't he? But he didn't. Yeah. He just did his own thing. And I think also the Pharisees did their own thing. They wanted to be in charge, and they believed that, well, they were chosen of God, but they got proud and thought they got threatened by Jesus because he was doing things they should have done, and they got threatened, so they wanted to pull him down. And you know, just it's so sad, really, because they had everything they could have had. They could have had everything if only they'd have believed, wouldn't they? But you know, just thinking, pondering about these things. But you know, I think we have to be so careful, because I can remember seeing a program on Judas. It was a film, and they were saying in this film, because I remember watching it. I was going down to Devon on the coach, and they had this film on. I was with Simon when he was a child, and you know, they were saying, you know, it was because of his disappointment, thinking that Jesus was going to go marching in and taking the land, sort of thing, you know, getting rid of the Romans. And because of disappointment, as it built up, then it became, you know, anger, and then he decided to betray. It didn't just happen like that. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And we guard our hearts at things. We don't let things build up in our hearts as well. So I know myself, I have to watch it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think this is. I'll come to you in a minute, Caroline. See your hand there.
That's okay.
It says here, Judas had never truly believed in Jesus. I've put in the notes here from the ESV notes. Jesus was aware of this. It's shown in John 6, 2 places, 64 and 70. And though apparently none of his disciples realized it, see note on Luke 22:23. So that's yet to come. We won't dash on ahead just yet. Judas's pattern of dishonest behavior was evidence of his unbelief. And that's shown in John 12:6. And here, with the consent of Judas's sinful heart, Satan entered into Judas, and thereby exercises a much greater influence over his actions, prompting him to go to the chief priests with a plot. John mentions that Satan entered into Judas again at the time of the Last Supper. So there is this sense where Judas's heart had not been right the whole way through. He complained.
What happened during these other times?
Let me finish, Karen. I'll come to you in a minute.
Sorry.
What he did was that they said he was taking money out of the purses. Mm-hmm. He had a big thing about money. He had a big thing about some of these areas. When ointment was poured on Jesus's feet in one of the Gospels, he says, "Why wasn't this money taken and spent on the poor?"
Oh, that was Judas, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, this is who we're talking about.
No.
So in this, Judas has shown a pattern the whole way through. People weren't fully aware of. And little things of the heart, little things give us away of where our heart really is. And I think, you know, very often you find that people's attitudes, that they just do things without thinking about it. But actually there's a spiritual thing behind the state of their hearts that shows through. Yeah. And you see that time and time again. And actually, you know, sometimes it's pain on people's hearts. Sometimes it's other things like that. But you see the actions of it. And actually it's a sense of lostness. I mean, you look at, for example, alcoholism, right? What would you say the biggest root of alcoholism is? Many people would say, oh, they're just weak, it's in their DNA and all this kind of thing. But actually, it's isolation. And what does alcoholism do? Make it worse. And so they're more isolated and more isolated, living on the streets, even more isolated. And it just drives and perpetuates the symptom of what's going on. And I think in some of these things, there's something in the heart that's going on. You're seeing some of the little tiny signs in Judas and the whole run up to this. But at this point, it's almost like he gives his whole control over to this. And you see that sense of Satan entering Judas, something demonic comes into play. You know, there's a spiritual indicators the whole way along, but here you've got an openness to the spiritual dimension, and it moves things along a lot quicker in Judas's life in that direction. So I'm just sort of bringing that in from the ESV. Carolyn, and then Candy.
No, I was just wondering if someone as awful as him and Judas, then wouldn't that kind of like just send you completely over? I mean, would you actually? It's surprising that you'd still have your decision making, and I find that I'd find if someone as horrible and evil as him, that he it's surprised that he had that decision making to do that, really. Maybe he took over his mind or something, I don't know, but I don't know.
I think there's some of these things with the demonic and so on. I think I much prefer the term demonized to possessed kind of approach. But I think the influence of that demonic force, as it was on Saul years ago, in a different kind of spirit, here we find in Judas operating towards the death of Jesus. But what I'm trying to say is...
Paul, all right. So Paul had it as well. Then Paul had that.
No. Saul, in the Old Testament, tried to kill David. The Spirit came upon him. David used to have to play his harp to calm everything down. There's some of this in this where there's a willing participation with evil.
Mm-hmm.
And actually there's something in this, I think, with Judas where he's become a willing participant with evil. There's a joining up of forces, what was in his heart anyway, but also now on another level, and I think that's a very interesting statement, and I think it's there because he's one of the 12, but yet not, and there's so many twists in the story. You couldn't make it up. It's just incredible. Tandy?
Yeah, I think that idea of the inner circle, there's a lot of lessons that come out of this. I think a lot of things I think personally I have seen play out in terms of how it works with who is closest to you is the person who is most likely to truly be used by the enemy to actually break you. And so I think it's the greatest, that's why they were so happy. They couldn't believe their luck. They're like, wow, one of the closest, the one with, who's quite inner. But also people come inner with that closeness for various reasons. I think it's also it's something that really comes out here. And so, discernment is quite a huge thing, part of, what rescues us from, how the enemy can infiltrate. It could just be anybody. You've seen families destroyed that way. You can see ministries, churches destroyed like that. You've seen big organizations in the corporate world. It's all the same. The enemy knows who to go for. The ones who are most trusted and closest are usually the most dangerous. And so you find that, but also you find, I know there's a lot of, and I'm not a very big fan of some statements I see sometimes floating around social media. And it's like, it's more or less encourages discarding people instead of helping people who don't realize that they're just going down the wrong path. And so we're not in the ministry of discarding people, but you do realize that sometimes you can have people who are going for this political correctness and not really building up, and not really encouraging others. And I think with the question whether things are going right or whatever, or if there's things like Jenny was saying, it would have been as easy as go and talk to him. you're imagining that they have so many meetings, they sit around this table, and the opportunities to actually say, Jesus, how does this work? And get clarity on things that need clarity. But instead of using that channel, you let something brew and brew and brew and brew until it becomes something, as genuine, that was just so spot on, something that you never saw coming. And then that gives the enemy, the devil, a foothold, and you've just opened a door to a whole load of other evil things that could happen. So I think there are many great lessons here that to take. The Bible encourages us to guard our hearts, and talk to the person, bring it up. Things don't always go, because we are people, we're all learning from each other, and things don't always go according to what we even think or expect, but also just trying to understand the whys. Why is this like this is very important, and ironing out and saying, expressing. I think that's relationship. For me, just takes me to relationship. I think when people are doing life together in this relationship, it's different from when there's just piled expectations, and there's a separation of me and them over there. And so it's as if Judas was not even part of this inner circle, the way he behaves. It's as if he's not even part of it, because he would have sought for the good of the team, and if there were any questions, they should have been raised. And him also bringing his 2 cents of wisdom, if he had, he thought, okay, it's wanted here. So probably it was more that he wanted, more than just that. That's what it does seem to me to be. And sometimes we do also have that. Well, I think the beautiful thing about what I saw there was that Jesus knew exactly, who Judas was and what was going on with him. Jesus knew that Judas was going to betray him. I think sometimes in leadership, we actually have leaders who don't know, and pick up people with wrong motives and put them in the inner circle when their motives are not right. They actually haven't weighed to see. And I think for us, the Bible always says, by their fruit you shall know them. How do we know? How do we discern? Look at the fruit around someone. Sometimes people are just taken and put onto places, into positions, and not actually looking at what fruit is actually coming out of this person. So that could actually help to tie in and weigh some of those motives. What is really their heart? If it is the power and the position, they're likely to just bring down everything and break people, as opposed to build them up. So I think there's so many wonderful things.
I think there's a number of different applications, but I just sort of think in this, what we need to remember is it's not a distrust of people. I think what was in Judas's heart was there all along. Jesus knew. I don't think he was surprised. In fact, at the Last Supper, he says, go and do what you need to do. There's no surprise there from Jesus, and no resistance to it from Jesus. And I think that's very interesting. And so what I think is, I think there, for Judas, I think the isolation of his not really being part of things, I think, could be part of all of this as well. I think it just gets worse and worse. But I think what I feel a caution in what you're sharing is that kind of distrust of people. The people closest to you are the ones who do you in, and all that kind of thing. I think the danger from that is we end up not letting people close. And I think we're designed for community and designed to let people close. And the risk is we can be injured by that. But I think on the whole, it's worth the risk. And I think that's probably where I'd come from. I don't know if you have other thoughts on that, Tandy, you want to bring in later.
Yes, what you're saying is what I'm saying. That's what I was saying, that I'm not a fan of what I see floating around social media that looks like, don't let people in, and we're not in the business of discarding people. That's what I meant.
Got you.
So what I see that Jesus knew, and what did he try to do? obviously having him there, it would have been to Judas's benefit.
Yeah.
So it can be mentoring, it can be nurturing such kind of people, but you know that this is their heart. So there was opportunity for him to change his ways and learn something better from Jesus. But because he kept and had used that opportunity to find clarity and sit there and talk things through, that would have been beneficial for him.
Yeah.
So I'm totally with you. I'm not for discarding people and mistrusting people. But all I'm saying is, who does the enemy use normally when he really wants to bring down anything? It's more like, go for the heart of things and you bring down anything. When the shepherd is wounded, it's easy to scatter the sheep. When the head of the home is attacked, it's easy to bring down that family and go for the children and everything else. When things are not working, right at the top, it's always right at the top. When things are not okay, right at the top where things are supposed to be held together, then you find that the enemy has. And looking at the fact that here's an opportunity, like you're saying, that when many people are actually gathered, it's easier to do that at that point rather than in the secret. So they went for the heart of things right at the center of this leadership. Just look at Jesus, his inner circle, and it's one of his own. It's Judas who's coming out. It's a proper public demonstration and opportunity to bring this whole, rule of Jesus or reign of Jesus down. So that's what they went for. So it's always the enemy seems to attack from the top. That's my main point.
I think the amount of times I've seen this in churches where you've got something gets in, I find it very often it's hidden for a long time. I find it very rarely comes to the full confrontation at the head. It will be an attack on the head, but it snipes from the bushes, and that's very often what happens. And I think in this is a full-on assault. This with Judas, I mean, it's like his inner core team, it's the whole thing, but very often that comes through.
If people are sort of honest about themselves and where they're at, then it's better, isn't it? Because maybe it's not like I say too much honesty. Really, I think I go the opposite way, but I think to at least to be honest and out there, at least then I don't know, at least then you can that then the other person can challenge your thoughts. I think if you get it out there, then it's not whirling around in your head. Then you can get it challenged, I think, and I think people. I mean, we all have things that are hidden, isn't it? It's just that you have to make sure that you're honest about it, really. Honest,
But but I think everything said, even if the whole way through Judas had gone, I don't really agree with Jesus, the whole way through, I don't think we'd have got to a different conclusion even. I think this is something deep in the heart. And this distrust he's kept to himself. And I think what you're saying is that honesty really helps, I think, Carolyn. And that would have meant that there was a confrontation earlier on. But people only bring that when they want to fix something. When someone has decided in their heart they don't really want to fix it, they want to do it in, they take a very different approach. And I think there's something...
They stay quiet, you mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they choose their moment carefully, and they do that in certain ways. And I think that's the long political game. I mean, you look at politics. If we're going to talk politics for a moment, on some of these things, you look at how suddenly in the press we suddenly become aware there's a camera pointed directly at the spot where this guy kisses someone he's having an affair with, and they just happens to get released from that camera into the press. And you think, wow, What was the point of a security camera pointing that way? Well, actually, it should have been pointing another way. Someone had turned the security camera to point it that way. How did the head of security of a secure government office allow some of their videotape to get to the press? You know, when the secret things are being discussed in government, you don't want any of those videos getting out. You don't want anything. Your security needs to be tight.
Is that what's in the press now, then?
No, this happened a couple of years ago, right? With the guy, health guy, wasn't it? Had to step back, right? And you sort of think they were caught out, breaking all the social rules under lockdown and all this stuff, and you sort of think, how does that happen? Someone had it in for him. That stuff then comes out. Boom, down comes the whole deck of cards. Do you know what I mean? There's a whole thing there, but that's someone you don't really get to see. They haven't had a upfront confrontation. They've sniped from the sides in such a way that they haven't even got they haven't got a smoking gun in their hands. They look all squeaky and clean. It could be anybody, you know, and you sort of get that kind of feeling. That's how politics is played, and I think here it's quite well. I mean, can you imagine being the chief priest when Judas comes up and goes, "Hey guys, I'm throwing my lot in with you," and you think, "Ooh, just wait there, Judas. Hi everyone. Guess what? Guess what I just found out." Do you know? You can imagine how that all came together and all secret. Oh wow, this is how it's going to play out. But the actual thing Judas does is he greets his friend with a kiss at night time with a whole mob of soldiers. You know, you're thinking that's a sudden confrontation, but it's been hidden all along. But it wasn't hidden to Jesus. And sometimes God's purposes are worked out despite the biggest evil intents. God works, just moves beyond it. There is nothing that can stop God in his might and his power. And actually that's something we need to keep in mind with all these things. The overarching purposes of God for Jesus to pay the price for the sin of the world. Actually he used the mess that Judas was in his heart and also the spiritual aspects of that, and turned it all on its head and brought good out of it. And I think that's incredibly powerful. You know, and I think that's something to bear in mind. Is sometimes you can see the little thing in the heart there a little bit drifting along, but actually sometimes it has to grow to its fullness before you can actually deal with it. Sometimes there's things there, there's timings in all these things. And I think, you know, there's a lot going on, and I think we must always remember we never wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities.
Yeah,
and
powers. we are because with your own, you know, weaknesses, I think, and your own, I think that the enemy just wants to grab hold, and if that means that some, you know, like people that matter a lot to God, he wants to bring them down, definitely. And he brings them down through different ways, through the head, through people that families, Christian families, all sorts. Definitely.
But I think there's
aware of it. I think.
But I think one of the things I really find in some Christian circles.
Keep fighting.
But I think in some Christian circles you get this kind of theology around. Oh, it's all going to be fight, warfare. Oh yeah, you know, if I'm going to do any good today, I've got the devil against me. I've got all this. The whole focus moves on to the negative, what the enemy is doing.
Yeah.
But actually, that's wrong. Because what that does is it keeps that perpetuation. It empowers things that don't need empowering. We recognize we have an enemy. We recognize there'll be a battle for things. But our focus is always what God's bringing forth. And I think in this situation, Here's Judas doing the dirty on Jesus. God's fully aware of it. and actually in that, his purposes are much further on. And I think sometimes we need to keep our eye on the sovereignty of God and not just on the battle, because we can end up fighting battles we're not asked to fight. And I think that's really important. Tandy, I see your hand up there.
Yeah, I think you just spot on there. And that's why I think that, for me, what's really struck me there is the fact that Jesus knows, and it's about keeping. And I think, like you're saying, when we focus on the evil, we actually lose it, and we end up actually discarding people. And yet we're called to make disciples. And part of walking together is even calling out some of those things that are, and again, that's why I think a relationship is better. Because only when you have relationship, you can actually say, my brother, my sister here, I think, let's watch out for this, let's watch out for that. And that's what love does. The Bible says, correct one another in love. And I think that's the right spirit. And I imagine that around this table, when they had these meetings with Jesus, all these wonderful, and you can imagine he's teaching, he's saying all these other parables, and he's really going for refocusing them, bringing them back into alignment and dealing with the heart issues that go around. And so I think sometimes this is what we can lack for sure. It's also not just watching and saying, I know that one, they're evil. Something is cooking up, and you also just leave it like that. I don't think that's the real love for a brother or sister. But also, not just also, like you're saying, it's things that brew over time. I don't think that also it just comes up one day and boom, somebody is like that. They must have been disgruntled. They must have been upset for a very long time coming. And sometimes it might not necessarily. I know there are a few cases I remember, because, it's just as I'm talking, names are not important, but sometimes also it's not that people are just brewing something. That I remember, a particular case once that's just coming to mind. It's not necessarily that sometimes also maybe it's because they had something really evil brewing in their mind. It might just be such a real genuine a need, a genuine situation going on, and they just need, and they've got nobody to talk to about it. No, don't raise this because, and it goes two ways. But you find that, with the leadership of Jesus there as well, I think Jesus was quite an open person, to the point that for me, I look and I think, come on, Judas, what was wrong with you? You had this loving person like Jesus who went about doing good, compassionate and all this, and he missed that opportunity relationally. Like you're saying, I think he kept himself outside things. He missed that opportunity relationally to grow an understanding of, the deep things. I love the Bible says they're deep mysteries. And he says, come to me. And he says, draw near to me. It's the drawing near, draw near to me. Not just a physical drawing near, but a heart drawing near. And then I will show you these deep mysteries. Sometimes genuinely people, there's things they don't understand. There's things they're battling with. There are things they're contending with. And they're really feeling stuck. That's why I loved when Carolyn, you said, if I bring out something, this idea of just being open and upfront and real, and that takes relationship. That takes doing life together. That takes that moving together. How can two walk together unless they be agreed? And so we get to know where each other's challenges are. We get to know, because sometimes genuinely it's a real problem that's really affecting someone's life big time. And so you can't expect that to be swept under the carpet or just be quiet about it. But when you have relationship, you can say, hey, I'm really struggling with this thing. If it's gambling, hey, this thing is really breaking me apart, brother. Help me out. What do I do here? So I think that openness really is what builds. This was a core team of Jesus, and we, looking at how we are family together as believers of today, what can we learn out of this? I think that openness with one another, that relationship with one another, that correcting each other in love, and both ways, because hardening of hearts can happen in either direction, and where we actually don't see where the other one, what's going on with this other brother, to be able to help them. It's not just they're hardening their heart. And if we see someone hardening their heart, the Bible does tell us, we should be building each other, encouraging each other, exhorting one another, especially as the day, the times are getting harder and more evil. The Bible reminds us to do that for each other, because, the enemy is out for sure, but we should be focusing on that love and those love relationships and the positives, because like you said, I think, sometimes it just gets too much of fanning the flames of evil. And I think where you override that with genuine love and openness and relationship and walking together, it just makes a whole lot of difference. And it brings the right fruit forward.
Yeah. Thanks, Tandy. Saw Jenny's hand pop up there.
No, I was just saying, the thing is, though, all these things had to happen to fulfill Scripture, didn't it?
Yeah.
Judas had to betray Jesus for everything to happen like that. That's the ironical thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, or someone have to? Someone had to, I suppose, didn't they?
Yeah.
But
I
mean, it wasn't him. It was someone else. I mean, if Judas had come alongside Jesus and sorted things out in his heart, I mean, Jesus must have given him lots of opportunities to do that,
Yes. I think you've got a good point there, Carolyn. I think
someone would have.
I think if you look at it on different perspectives, so the overarching sovereignty of God in the situation, he saw from the beginning what was going to happen. It's prophecies in the Old Testament fulfilled in this: the betrayal, the person who's taken my bread has lifted up his heel against me. David talks about in Psalms. You've got prophetic links into the situation, all going on through the time. So you can see the sovereignty of God in it, but it also meets human will. And so here you've also got Judas in his heart of hearts not going along with Jesus. Something is festering there, and eventually that becomes full-blown evil. And actually that evil has its best attempt at trying to kill off Jesus, and it goes for it. And expressed by Judas, who agrees with it, and boom, it's a significant attack on the very purposes of God.
Yeah.
That God saw coming all along. It's all in his sovereignty. He knows all those things. But as it works out on the ground, it's feelings Judas is going along. There's things in his heart he's not dealing with. There's a whole load of things that lie behind some of those decisions on the way through. But yet God's purposes push through. And Jesus, even though he's aware of that, lets that slide because he knows the greater purposes of God are there as part of this all. And so I think, I think what you're saying is, if it wasn't Judas, it'd be someone else, because the overarching plan of God was this. And actually, I think there's some of those things you see in his might and power. And I think in this we need that kind of view of, two sides of the same coin. The sovereignty of God and man's free will. They're the same coin, but there's two different sides to it. And actually, as you look at it from the Judas angle, you see one side. If you look at it from the sovereignty of God, of course Judas needed to do that. So you've got these kind of two different things playing out. They don't quite meet in our minds. We can't put them all together, but they do in God. And it's seamless. And so in all of those things, I think there's an understanding, for us even, we're in the purposes of God, but at the same time we need to deal with our hearts. It's not just a fait accompli. There's stuff we need to deal with. There's stuff we need to work through. And so it's that combination of the two. And actually, if you think about Jesus, God incarnate, very God meeting man, boom, how does that all fit together? We don't fully know, but the two things fit together. There's a lot of things like that in God that fit together very, very neatly. And I think also for us, where we're surprised by things, God isn't. He knows the end from the beginning. They tried to tell me in Bible college, some of the guys who were looking at it all, and I'm not so sure of this, and But actually God knows. He is all-seeing. He is all-knowing.
Yeah.
You know, and he sees the end from the beginning. And so even in our lives where we're following him and we're going for it, and then suddenly something unforeseen happens, we need to actually, in that middle of that unforeseen, say, this hurts me on one level massively, but in this whole thing, I know, God, you will bring this around for good, because you are good and your purposes are good, and you will overturn this for good. And that sort of walking it out with our own feelings, our own emotions, all the things we need to work through, but there's also working it out, the sovereign plan of God. He will help us through this. And so we can take that to our illnesses, we can take that to the things we fight through, we can take that to disasters, we can take that to all situations. God will bring good out of it. He always does. And even the struggles we have day by day, God can bring good out of it. And we need to hold on to that in the middle of the turmoil. It's like holding on to a tiger's tail sometimes, but we've got to do it. Tandy.
Amen. I'm just going to read this scripture from Matthew 5:23. I think that just helps to bring these issues where people are bitter, angry, and things that need reconciled, really. Matthew 5:22. I'll start from 22. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to his brother, Raka, will be subject to Sanhedrin. That's not the bit I'm looking for, but anyone who says, you fool, will be subject to the same. So if you're offering your gift, that's 23, if you're offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar. First go and be reconciled to your brother, and come and offer your gift.
Yeah.
It goes on and on and on about, I think, you don't, speak with your brother, and if not, then, go and get another witness. If not, or that, bring it to the church. So I think the Bible really helps us, because I thought while we are at this, and someone listening may be thinking, okay, so what am I to do if I feel that way? Because I don't think this is also about saying part of guarding your heart is being open, getting the muck out, getting the stuff that we don't understand out, getting the things that have upset us, even because there are things that actually upset. We can't say that there are no things that upset, but it's how you deal with it, how you respond to it. Like you're saying, there's a willingness here that Judas gave over. That's why, what are you willing, to do for us? If we know, what are you willing? There's this willingness that we actually hand over. We don't open the door. The enemy just doesn't come in. He doesn't have that authority to just come in. We've given our lives to Jesus Christ. We've opened our hearts, because you can only, the Bible says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, and soul. So you can only give him that permission to do that. As you've given permission for Christ to move in, we can easily give, the enemy the same permission to come in, the devil himself to come and do stuff. And it's not necessarily saying, yes, I give you permission, but it's by what we harbor in our hearts. So it's better to get something out and say, I'm not happy. It's not ungodly to tell someone, I'm not really happy about this. If they decide to label you as you're disgruntled, you're this, that's okay. But you've done what you've needed to do to get rid of the muck and deal with things according to what God says. And then that way you can now, allow the Spirit of God to help you and to heal you. God can't just, come and force himself on you. So I think these are real practical tools as to say, how do you deal with the situation of not hardening your heart and being soft towards the Spirit of God to actually come in and show you those places and touch them and heal them. Because I think sometimes, yes, it does go both ways, that you may try and open up to someone, and then they are the one who hardened their heart, instead of seeing that, look, I think this has injured someone. Let me help them to heal. Let us talk about this and get this reconciled. So it's the ministry of reconciliation. I think that's what I picked. Is the key thing there is reconciliation. And that means both hearts, either side, on both sides of the coin, opening up hearts and saying, what might have gone wrong here? Let me help you. Sometimes even if the person doesn't want to do that, just release them, leave them to God. That's where the forgiveness comes in, because it doesn't do harm to the other person. It hurts my heart if I don't let go. It hurts your heart if you don't let go and allow the Spirit of God to come in. And then you can end up really hardened to the point of killing. It's not just about physical killing. We've got a situation here where they're plotting to kill Jesus physically. But in what ways can we also kill another person? Harboring that bitterness and anger towards someone. Oh, it's because they did this and it's because they've done that. And yet you've never told them. And yet you've never sat down with them to say, I think this is how I feel. And so I think relationship gets us to do that. And if not, just release someone, because there are people that you'll try to do that with and they're just not open. It's them that can decide to harden their heart. You just keep yours. It just happens on either side. But I think because this was Jesus, this is perfect God, we don't see that playing out. But as human beings, this can play out from both directions. It can be parent-children. It can be leadership it can be your employers at work. It can be in any setting. So I think practically this can play out anyhow. But what do? You don't destroy someone's business. You don't destroy someone's family. You don't go and destroy your church, because this is not somebody's church. This is about the same God that you claim to love. And I see sometimes you see that playing out and you're thinking, is someone thinking to that extent? If you're going to think I'm going to bring down a whole denomination or destroy this pastor and their church, this is God's work. And I think at the heart of this, that they were trying to destroy Jesus. The strong lesson for us as believers is everything, even the things sometimes that we think we're trying to correct, all of it is for kingdom's cause. All of it is for our Father's work. So if you destroy a brother, it's not the brother you're destroying. It is the very Jesus that you're trying to kill. Exactly back to what these people were trying to do in a public display of that. They didn't do it, go and say we're going to do it, but they went for the top, and it's sneakily, as you're saying. So some of those sneaky things that can happen at the end of the day, are we for building the kingdom or our Father's work and doing what he is, advancing these purposes, or we're going to end up destroying. So sometimes it's just to step back and think, is this going to build it or it's going to destroy it?
Thanks, Tandy. I see Carolyn's hand up there. Just what I'd also say is, just comes to mind is Ephesians, where it says, he is our peace, who has broken down every wall. And the context of that is breaking down the wall between the Jews and the Gentiles, in the context of that passage. But that sense of where we get closer to God, we get closer to each other. And where we allow God to soften our hearts, we can be soft-hearted towards one another. And I think the key thing in church is to keep that relational contact with God that shapes our contact with others. And that softness and that gentleness towards him and that soft-heartedness towards him affects our hearts with others. And I think where you find a resistance in that, very often you find something in the relationship with God is not where it should be. It's become about power. It's become about something else. It's become about pain. It's become about loads of other things. But actually it's that softness in the heart towards God, not letting bitterness in, like you say, Tandy. Bitterness is really sick in many situations. It's sometimes when anger's been misdealt with and it sits and festers. It's not a good thing. It needs to be out, as Carolyn was saying. Carolyn, I saw your hand up. You're going to say something?
No, not really. I think that I think we need Christian counsellors, or we need people to come alongside us, and thank God that Jesus has done what he's done, and once the the person of the Holy Spirit is within you, and you've wanted him, and there isn't any room for any other evil. And I think the evil can affect you, but if he hadn't taken Jesus into his heart, I don't suppose they did that then, did they? Because it was the other side of the cross at that time, wasn't it? So But I think that well, I know that if God has been present in your life and present in your heart, then there isn't any room for anything to come in, because God is, he has the victory, and he, you can't, greater is he that is in you that is in the world, so, and I do think that the mind has a lot to do with things if you don't deal with your mind properly. And so, maybe loving God with all your mind more would be better. Yeah,
well, that's what we're told to do, isn't it? Thanks, Carolyn. And I think that's a great place to leave it. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your strength, and love your neighbour as yourself. And actually, if you can live that in your heart of hearts, a lot of trouble will be avoided. And it's a constant reminder to us. So thanks for that, Carolyn. Thanks, Tandy. Thanks, Jenny. It's been a wonderful morning. I think we'll land it there, and then tomorrow we can continue with the rest of that preparation for the Passover, the actual nuts and bolts of it. And I still think, just the thought for tomorrow, really, is it a blokishness in the disciples that they haven't thought of where they're going to eat the Passover? If this was my house, my wife would have thought of it months ahead. If you're in Jerusalem, you're going to need somewhere to eat. She'd have thought through some of those aspects. Whatever it is, not just about eating or anything. She plans and thinks. I don't. I kind of walk in there and, now what we're going to do a little bit. I don't know. Is it a male-female thing?
Like that.
We might have a bit of
I'm a bit like that. I kind of go.
Yeah. We might have a discussion about some of this tomorrow. I think it'll be lively. But look forward to that. Anyway.
No, honestly, seriously, I think it actually speaks of a lot of strategy in kingdom right there.
It does.
It does.
Yeah. Okay. We'll leave.